all right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our mental health ministry monthly conversation. Uh, I ask that everybody, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and share the post for us. I'm sure there'll be some very valuable information. Those that are on Facebook or YouTube, if you'd like to join us on the Zoom platform and participate in the verbal conversation, feel free to click the link that's pinned to the top of your comments and join us on Zoom. Otherwise, you can type it in the chat and we'll try our best to pay attention to the chat. I present to you the coordinator of our mental health ministry, Mr. John Parker.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
All right. Good to see everyone again. I'm glad to be here. Last month, we had a very good conversation about creating and maintaining new habits. We wanted to start off 2025 right, and it's just so fitting that as a church, we started off doing the Daniel fast. And I think that Daniel fast was one way that we were trying to, as a body, to kind of just get ourselves in the same state of mind when it came to fasting and hearing from the Lord, and just creating a new habit for ourselves with our eating and healthy eating and discipline and all of that. So last month we got pretty far into the conversation, but it was still a good little bit ways to go. And so Pastor Ron thought it was a good idea for us to kind of pick up from where we left off last time. And I guess maybe I'll start with a little bit of review, just in terms of catching folks up on what we were talking about. And so, right, and understanding that a habit is a regular, unconscious behavior or practice acquired through repetition. And so, what's important about understanding what habits are is that it doesn't always have to be something that we're doing intentionally. A lot of times, people think, "Oh, it's a habit," and it's like something that we're just doing over and over again. The biggest part of habit is about something that is unconscious behaviors, things that are going on in the background, things that we're doing without even thinking about them, but they're formed through or acquired through repetition, repetition, repetition. So it's something that we're doing and we do and we do, whether we're conscious of it or not, but it happens through repetition, and it's a routine action. It takes little to no effort. It's something that we do often, and it just becomes a part of our life where we're just like, hey, I didn't even realize I was doing this thing. And it becomes so habit. It's such a habit for me that it just comes naturally, or it seems like it comes naturally. And then it can be positive or negative, and it's formed as the brain creates neural pathways that make the behavior automatic over time. And so the importance of habits is that it affects our. We go to the next slide. Sorry. Yep. It affects our daily life. It affects our health. Um, Consistency, like trying to form a habit, being consistent with that thing equals success in life and doing that habit and creating the habit. It can create decision fatigue. So we talked about it last time. So basically, a short version of decision fatigue is that we have to do a lot of things during the day. And when we don't have habits put in place, or things that we do consistently, having to think about what to do all the time, all day, all day, all day, because we haven't formed good habits, can lead to decision fatigue, and it makes it difficult to just live life when we're always having to make decisions all the time when we don't have good habits. Creating habits can lead to behavioral change, self-discipline. It can increase your productivity. It can improve your emotional well-being. It can help you form a good identity. As we talked last time, sometimes we believe like procrastination. Some of us, on the negative aspect, get so far behind on projects and things that we're trying to do because we have bad habits or don't have good habits, is that we believe that we're just procrastinators. And sometimes, like I was explaining last time, you'll even believe that, oh man, I work my best when I'm under the pressure of procrastination. Like if I have a paper due, if I do it the night before it's due, man, that's when I always get my A's. And it's like, no, you probably would get an A anyway, but because you waited to the last minute, now you're stressing and worked up and have anxiety, and so that you think that your identity is based in your procrastination when it's really just bad habits. And so that procrastination leads to other negative things like stress and depression and all these things, and it can become who you are, but it's not really who you are. It's just a product of your bad choices and your lack of having good habits. And when you have good habits, it helps you with lifelong learning. And lifelong learning, as we talked about last time, is just, when you're reading or you're always in a place of learning, you're always in a place of skill development and growth. When you have good habits, you can be in that space where you're always able to grow and to become a better person, and to just kind of live a life that's more beneficial for you. We can go to the next one. Any questions so far? I know I'm going kind of quick, but I'm just kind of recapping.
No, sir.
Okay, all right. So the connection between habits and mental health. So with routine and stability, consistent habits provide structure and predictability, which can reduce anxiety and create a new sense of stability in daily life. So when you talk about routine and stability, the good thing about having habits and putting habits and good habits into effect is that it does create a sense of stability and a routine. If you know that every morning you got to take your kids to school at 7:30, but you're waking up at 7:25, 7:15, 7:03, and it's not a consistent set thing that you wake up at a certain time to get out the door by a certain time. It just creates instability. Excuse me, it creates instability in your life, and it makes it difficult for to start your days, to get your kids on time, to get out of the house on time. And so when you create good habits of, hey, I'm gonna wake up at 6:30 in the morning, brush my teeth, wash my face, shower, drink something like some tea or something, some coffee, whatever it is that you're doing, take a shower, whatever the thing is, and then get out of the house as opposed to waking up rushing. um, it kind of creates a better routine and more stability for yourself. A lot of times it's easy just to wake up and go, but that doesn't mean it's good for you, and it doesn't mean it's good for just stability in your life. So stress reduction is another connection between having good habits and having good mental health. It can improve your mood. Again, using the example of getting the kids to school on time in the morning. If you're waking up at the last minute, you don't have a good habit of waking up, you're going to be angry. You're probably going to be upset when you're trying to rush, 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 rush and get kids out the door. As opposed, if you ease into your day, start at a good time, wake up at the pace that you need to, get out at the time that you need to get it to. When you're doing stuff like that, it kind of improves your mood. Otherwise, you might find yourself yelling and fussing and rushing the kids when it's really you that needs to hurry up, but you're all worked up, and so you getting the whole house worked up. And bad habits create bad mood. Enhanced cognitive function, it just helps your brain move better. Healthy habits, including balanced nutrition, regular exercise, sufficient rest. It supports brain health, and it improves your concentration, your memory, and your overall cognitive function. And again, cognitive function is just how your brain works. Self-efficacy, behavior regulation. Again, when you have good habits and those things are in place, it controls your behavior in such a way so you're not always worked up, you're not always frustrated, you're not always just creating bad space for yourself to kind of concentrate, think, and therefore your behavior is better. Coping mechanisms is something that we talked about as well, and healthy habits can serve as a positive coping mechanism, replacing harmful behaviors like substance abuse or overeating with more constructive activities. And so we talked about it last time, and I think Pastor Raj, you might have mentioned biting your fingernails. And so sometimes we do things automatically. That's why it's a habit, in order to cope with stressful events, with anxious events, with things that kind of just happen in our daily life. And so we create these habits. And so when we have bad habits, or when we just don't have habits in place to keep us from doing anxious things, maybe like biting our fingernails. Um, we just kind of do things that we may not want to do. Biting fingernails in itself isn't necessarily negative. It can have negative repercussions on your hands, or just maybe something that you wish you didn't do. But if we don't have good habits in place and good healthy coping mechanisms, we kind of pick up bad habits, and then maybe have unhealthy coping mechanisms. Were you able to tackle anything with those fingernails over the last month?
Well, they actually worked pretty good on the Daniel fast. Um,
Oh, I
uh,
can't hear you.
I said they actually worked pretty good
Okay.
with the Daniel fast, and
Mm,
so it was it wasn't, I don't know if it was a fruit or a vegetable, but it actually worked good. It worked good with
mhm.
the Daniel fast.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. And that's kind of what happens too. I think with that Daniel fast, we heard a lot of people talking about, hey, certain cravings, certain things, certain habits that they had were kind of put to the side or kind of shelved because I guess a certain level of what's the word you want to use? I don't know, just creating that habit and eating. healthy and resisting the temptation to eat things that weren't on the list, kind of, help them kind of recognize and realize like, there's some things that I'm doing, maybe eating at night, or maybe unhealthy eating, or maybe stress eating, that was kind of put to the side by kind of participating in the fast, and created kind of maybe healthy healthy coping mechanisms. Mindfulness and being present, support for recovery. We talked a lot last week about recovery, especially when it comes from substance abuse and alcoholism, and creating good habits can create a good space for support recovery, supporting your recovery, and prevention of mental health issues. And basically, regular engagement in healthy habits can prevent the onset of mental health problems by promoting resilience and emotional balance. Next slide. And habits are important, and habits matter because they allow us to perform tasks without thinking much about them. And this can preserve time and mental energy. As I mentioned before on one of the previous slides, when we have good habits and when our days are structured, we can do things automatically. And habits help us kind of move along in such a way where we don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about what we're going to do next or planning things. When we have good habits in place and we have good plans in place, we just do things automatically. Again, it can save time. It can reduce the amount of mental load that you have to do things. And having good habits, positive habits, can improve your health, improve your productivity, and improve your spiritual growth. And that's kind of important for where we are and what we're going to talk about moving forward. Next slide. And the science of habits. So we spent some time last week talking about, and I think we have a video that will show, talking about how we create habits and the sciences behind it. It used to be, people would say it takes you 30 days to create a habit, and one day to kind of forget that habit. And so, although that may have some truth, we have a little bit more science now that kind of talks about how we form habits. And there's a cue, routine, and reward that we'll discuss in the video, maybe discuss a little bit in recap. But just the idea that if your cue is you feel stressed after a long day at work, there's a routine that happens after that, that you have to create so that you get a reward when you do that routine. I'm sorry, you have a cue, which is feeling stressed at work. There's a routine that you have to put in place in order to create a habit, and again, we'll talk about it in the video. And part of that, creating that routine, is giving yourself a reward, as well as you get the reward of feeling better, or feeling less stressed, depending on what it is that your routine is that you're trying to create. And so let's watch the next video and watch the slide, and so we'll have a better idea of how this cue, routine, and reward works.
So, if you're like me, you probably have at least a few bad habits you would like to break, but it's tough because no matter how hard I try, I seem to slip back into the same old routines again and again.
In the last decade, we've learned a lot about how habits work.
That's Charles Duhigg, author of the book The Power of Habit.
And in particular, we've learned the neurological structure of a habit.
He says that we tend to think of habits as a single thing, but actually,
Each habit has three components. There's a cue, which is like a trigger for a behavior to start. And then there's a routine, which is the behavior itself. And then finally, a reward, which is how our brain learns to encode that automatic behavior for the future. And one of the big differences is that for years when people thought about habits, they focused in on the routine, on the behavior. But what we now know is that it's these cues and these rewards that really shape how habits occur and how to change them.
and Charles says that whether we like it or not, this kind of habit formation is endemic to our brain.
And what it will do is our brain will latch onto a cue that it associates with a behavior and a particular reward. And over time, that cue and that reward become more and more and more sort of intertwined. A particular part of your brain named the basal ganglia will relate them together. And the behavior that's associated with that will just sort of happen automatically.
But Charles says the good news is we can also use this knowledge to our advantage.
There was a big study that was done about how to create exercise habits. And so what they did is they told a group of people, okay, first of all, choose an obvious cue. Always go running at the same time every day, or put your workout clothes next to your bed so that you see them first thing when you wake up. And then they said, and then go for a run or go work out. And when you get back from exercising, give yourself a small piece of chocolate. Now, this is kind of counterintuitive, right? Because people who are exercising are trying to lose weight, not eat more chocolate. And yet, what the researchers knew is that their brain needed that reward. Their basal ganglia needed some reward. And what they found was that people who ate a small piece of chocolate after coming home from a run or a workout, they were much more likely to start exercising habitually.
So, according to Charles, whether you want to break a habit or start a new habit, the key is to divide the habit into its component parts: cue, routine, and reward, and design it for the result that you want.
Right. Any questions on the cue, routine, and reward? It might have stopped early, but that was the general idea. So the general idea, again, that we're coming to understand routines and creating habits is that not that we need to eat more chocolate and eating more chocolate will help us create those good habits. It's just the idea that sometimes when we're trying to create new routines for ourselves, for instance, using the creating the routine or the habit of exercising, is that sometimes, if we, depending on how we're built, some people can just, this is what I'm going to do, and they make up their mind and they can create that habit. But for those of us that it may be a little more difficult, when we're trying to create that habit, our brain need some type of reward initially in order to help us build that routine in order to help us establish that habit. And so what is suggested in the video is that, hey, if you're trying to create the new habit or new routine of exercising, um, especially when you notice that you're stressed out at work or there's something going on and exercise kind of help you go off from theme, you either want to have those, running clothes right next to your bed. So when you wake up in the morning, you put those running clothes on and get right into that habit. Or you want to do the thing, or you want to do that same thing at the same time every day. And then after you do that thing, like exercise or go running, you give yourself a piece of chocolate, and eventually your brain will associate running with feeling good because it's getting that reward of getting that chocolate. But over time, you can start removing that chocolate from the routine, and your brain will automatically associate, hey, when I'm stressed out, I go ahead and run. When I run, I feel better. When I feel better, I like my day. And so it kind of gives you a way in which to, and it doesn't always have to be chocolate, but as the video points out, when you're trying to create a habit or stop a habit, you give yourself a reward to increase the likelihood that you'll continue to do the thing. And then that way it becomes automatic. And again, the goal isn't to eat more chocolate. You don't want to create another bad habit or do something bad in order to create a good habit, but it's good to have that good reward when you're trying to create that new habit, or that consistent habit. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay, okay. All right. So, what we talked to again in recap from last week is identifying your habits, right? There's positive habits and there's negative habits. And so when you think about, hey, we want to start off the new year right, well, I want to put myself in the best place to succeed. I just put up a couple areas in which we could think about, hey, what do I do or how do I begin to have these good habits so that I can, just create space for me to kind of just be successful this year. And so one of the areas was regular exercise. Another area was healthy eating. Another area was daily reading, waking up early, practicing gratitude, starting doing some meditation, and staying organized. And so these areas are generally areas in which, when we're doing these things consistently, and it doesn't have to be all of these things, but practicing three or four of these things on a daily basis can help us when we're trying to identify habits, and habits that are healthy for us and habits that are positive. We go to the next slide. And so the goal again with identifying these habits is to have self-reflection, and kind of figure out ways in which we can, be better. And so again, identifying negative habits. So again, these are some things that are generally uh, issues that affect us all in one way or another, to some extent. And we kind of, again, want to spend some time in order to move forward in 2025 in a way that's good, just identify some of these habits. And so procrastination, as I mentioned before, it's a thief of time. Procrastination to some extent affects us all in one way or another. And let's explore ways in which we may procrastinate so that we can kind of get rid of that habit. Overeating is a big deal, and it may not show up in everybody the same way. You know, I have a habit of eating things that I shouldn't eat, and when I eat those things, I eat a lot of it, and so I don't really generally eat a lot of ice cream. But when the bug hits, there may be I won't say I eat a gallon of it, but I can take care of a lot of ice cream. But when I think about it, usually when I'm doing that ice cream thing, is because either I'm stressed out or I'm anxious about something, or something else is going on in the background of my mind, and I just find myself, not having one scoop, not having two scoops, not having three scoops. I might have all the scoops, and it just becomes it's not good for me. And again, it may not show based on my body frame, but over time, just having a bad habit of eating a carton of ice cream once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week is put me in a bad space. Smoking, and the idea necessarily for number three isn't just smoking as a negative habit, although that can be a negative habit for some. Just in intaking things regularly, um, smoking other tobacco products, chewing snuff, all that type of stuff. It's just something that we need to check in with and just make sure that's not something that we're doing as a negative coping mechanism. Excessive screen time is a big deal in our current day and times. And we have access to so many tablets, so many iPads, so many phones, even watching TV. We got all the Netflix, we got all the binge watching, all that stuff is available to us. But spending too much time on our phones, computers, or TV is definitely a negative habit and something that we want to bring to just bring under control. And even the things that may seem harmless, like maybe scrolling through your phone right before you go to bed, it's a lot of data and science out there saying that watching it, looking at a phone, especially a phone or an iPad with a blue light that it puts out can actually create bad sleeping patterns. And we may think it's something that we're just doing that's harmless before we go to bed. Oh, let me just scroll, check my Instagram feed, check my Facebook page, let me check the news and see what's going on. But actually doing that, it harms our sleep and it doesn't let us sleep well because that blue light that's on the screens, that's on our devices, is actually telling our brain that it's time to be awake, that it's time to be alert, that it's time to start our day. And so when we're actually engaging in those activities before we go to bed, it actually harms our sleeping pattern and it doesn't allow us to get restful sleep. Skipping meals. Some people don't eat 3 times a day, which is fine. But when you're trying to be awake and you're trying to be alert and you're trying to have good days and just kind of be aware of what's going on, not eating regularly can lead to energy dips, and it also can lead to overeating later. And so sometimes maybe you don't have to have a full blown meal before you leave the house in the morning, but maybe if you make yourself a smoothie or you eat some fruits or some kind of healthy snacks like nuts or something like that can help kind of overeating at lunchtime. Or if you skip lunch, it may create a situation where you're overeating at dinner because you're so starving. Or energy dips throughout the day. Like, we need food to energize us. And again, it doesn't have to be a full blown meal and you're getting stuffed and you're about ready to pass out. But you just need to have some kind of level of like, hey, let me pay attention to my body, let me drink my water. Let me have a little snack on my desk, a little piece of fruit, a banana, or something, so that you can maintain energy throughout the day. Um, and negative self-talk is something, an inner dialogue that's critical or pessimistic. Is sometimes, we're taught that some people are taught that in order to encourage others, you have to get on somebody. You have to get on them, get on them, get on them, get on them. And sometimes they create negative self-talk for those people that we're doing that to. But at the same time, we can kind of do it to ourselves. When I mess up or do something I don't think I should do, I'm very hard on myself. And when I'm very hard on myself, it creates a space that I'm just not my best self. I'm not my healthy self. And it's sort of like, hey, I dropped something on the floor, I spill something, or I make a mistake. Instead of just like, all right, let me pick it up. Hey, let me pay more attention. I just like, oh, why did I do that? Oh, I'm so this. Oh, I'm so dumb. Oh, I'm so clumsy. And it's whether I know that or not, it's a habit, and it's a habit of just negative self talk that I think somehow that it's going to make me not spill that water again next time or to pay closer attention to what I'm doing. But all it does is break myself down, and it doesn't create good mental health. It doesn't create good feelings about myself. But it's just a habit that I've created, again, with the intentions of trying to keep me from do something that I shouldn't do or make a mistake that I shouldn't mistake, a mistake that I should make. And instead of looking at it as an accident, I talk bad about myself and it just creates negative space for me. And then last, poor sleep hygiene. Going to bed late or irregular sleep patterns that lead to insufficient rest is definitely a negative habit that I have. Doing all the things that I'm doing, but moving forward with 2025, I've kind of made up in my mind that hey, I got to get sleep. I got to get at least eight. Seven is acceptable, but I need at least 8 hours a night so that I can feel good in the morning, so I can feel rested, and so that I can start my day um, in a more, positive space. Any questions, comments, or concerns with positive or negative habits?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Setting goals for new habits we talked about, and I won't go into details with this, but we want to have, goals that are SMART. And so SMART is the acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, or time bound. And we're going to go to the next slide where we have some examples. And so oftentimes the problem with creating goals or starting habits or habit formation is that we create these habits or have these goals that are like not reachable. Like we just like, hey, I'm going to lose 50 pounds in a week. And unless you get in surgery, it's probably going to be very difficult to lose 50 pounds in a week. And so when we're thinking about creating habits, we want to have SMART goals. And so here's some examples. So say one of your goals are health related, and your goal. This is an example of a SMART goal. I will lose 10 pounds in 3 months by exercising for 30 minutes 5 days a week and tracking my daily calorie intake. Now, this is very specific, right? So you have the goal of losing 10 pounds, and it's time bound, right? 3 months. So you want to give yourself 3 months. And then how are you going to do that? By exercising for 30 minutes a day, which is measurable, 5 days a week, which is also measurable, and by tracking my daily calorie intake. Now, this is, maybe a little more difficult, especially if you're maybe eating snacks throughout the day and a banana here and peaches here or whatever. But the idea is that you have a goal in mind. And I think by putting yourself in a space where, hey, I'm going to lose these 10 pounds, I'm going to lose it in 3 months, which is realistic, for many people, by exercising 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And you make adjustments. Maybe you don't have time to necessarily exercise for 30 minutes every day, but maybe every other day, or maybe 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and you choose which day. But I think this habit, as we see here, 10 pounds in 3 months, exercising 30 minutes, 5 days a week, and tracking your calorie intake is a healthy way or is a smart way to create a health goal. And then a career goal. I will complete a professional certification course in my field within 6 months to improve my skills and job prospects. And so for me, putting this example to real life, is that every year, for being a licensed professional counselor or a licensed mental health practitioner, I have to do what they call continuing education units every year. And a lot of times people wait till the month that it's due and get all 30 units in at one time and be stressed out because they're cramming trying to get the stuff done. But if you set a goal like, hey, all right, I have 12 months, I got 30 units I need to do. I'm gonna do 3 units a month, which is like one class for a couple hours. And I do that once a month. By the time that 10th month come, I'm already done with my units. Or I can even space it out so that I don't have to work on it every month. But instead of cramming and doing 30 hours a day or two before the deadline comes, I can create goals in such a way that I can get this done, these 30 hours done in 12 months by doing 3 hours a month for the next 12 months. And it helps with my career goals. And so financial goals, I will save $1,000 over the next 5 months by setting aside $200 for my paycheck each month. And so again with financial goals, some people be like, "Oh man, I'm gonna just take this large lump sum out of my paycheck and put this away." And maybe that works for some people, and maybe some people it doesn't. But the idea is you want to create a smart goal instead of trying to put all that money away off of one paycheck. You just put $200 aside from each paycheck every month, and over a 5 month time, you have $1,000 saved up. And so these are just kind of examples of how you can create smart goals. And then the next slide kind of talks about, spiritual examples or ways in which you can service others or be of service to others. Again, using the examples of SMART goals. Say you have a prayer goal, you want to pray more. One way I would that you can create a SMART goal to say I would dedicate 15 minutes every morning for the next 30 days to prayer and reflection to deepen my spiritual connection. And again, you got 15 minutes a day, every morning, for 30 days to reflect. And so if, instead of, just randomly telling yourself, hey, I'm gonna pray today, or, I'll, make sure I pray every day, set aside the time, have a time limit, make sure you know how long you're gonna do it, and it'll be easier to create that habit, or start that goal. If you have a scripture reading goal, I will read one chapter of the Bible daily for the next 6 months to enhance my understanding of spiritual teachings. So again, instead of just telling yourself, man, I'll read the Bible more, create a goal for yourself. I will read one chapter of the Bible every day for the next 6 months. And then that way you're kind of building that habit. And after time, you might find yourself reading the Bible every day without even having to, stick to one chapter. Maybe you read more, maybe you read less. But as you're creating that habit, it's something that'll just become a part of what you do. And you find that routine is built in just because you used a smart goal to do that. And then maybe some people want to, be active in the community more. Maybe you want to help with the land mentoring program on Saturdays or something. And so you know what? Hey, I'm a volunteer at my local church or community service centers for 2 hours each week over the next 3 months to serve others and practice compassion. And so say, hey, instead of just again having this blanket idea of that I need to do community service, actually find a place to volunteer, actually do those 2 hours each week for the next 3 months, and then that way to become a habit for you and it'll just become automatic and you find yourself doing it more without being prompted or without feeling bad about not doing it. Once you commit it to your routine, it'll be what you do and it'll become easier and easier and easier. All right. The next slide, creating new habits. The one thing about creating new habits is that you want to start small and focus on one habit at a time. And you want it to be something that you can actually manage. And so, again, when we think about the previous slide, when we talked about the cue, the routine, and the reward, um, creating new habits, especially something that you want to be lifelong or something that you want to do on a long-term basis, you don't want to force yourself into just doing a bunch of stuff and it being things that you don't even want to do, that you're forcing yourself to do, because over time you're not going to like it, and it's going to become boring, or it's going to be you're going to realize like, man, this ain't really what I want to do. So just start small, start creating little habits, doing things that are manageable, and it can create that space for you to actually maybe even something that you don't like exercise. Like everybody doesn't like exercise, but if you do something that you actually can do, again, if you're telling yourself I'm gonna exercise 2 hours a day, and you know you don't have the time to do that, and you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it. Once you realize like, oh, 2 hours, yeah, I'm not doing that. It becomes very easy not to exercise when you think about that habit of having to do it for 2 hours. But if it's something that's like, hey, 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes every other day, I can do this. I can just a short amount of time, and you might find yourself working up to 30 minutes or an hour a day. But you want to start off with that very difficult task of 1 hour a day. That's going to make it, very likely that you won't even start doing that task. And then you can a way in which that you can create better habits is linking new habits to existing routines. It's called habit stacking. We'll talk about that on the next slide. And then using reminders and triggers, and we'll also talk about that on the next slide as well. But again, you just always want to have a space where you start small, you focus on one habit at a time, so that you can actually start doing that habit and it won't become like a chore. It'll be something that you actually want to do. All right. Creating a new routine, stack habits. Basically, as we kind of talked about last week, you want to. It may be beneficial for you in order to start new habits by stacking habits together. So something that you may already do, again, like a morning routine. You brush your teeth every day. Hopefully, it's a good habit to have. Brushing your teeth every day is a good habit to have. And so, in order to like, hey, you know what, I want to pray every day right after I brush my teeth, let me go ahead and pray immediately after I brush my teeth. And so that way you create those two habits. I'm already brushing my teeth every day. Right after I finish brushing my teeth, instead of rushing to do the next thing, let me go ahead and stop and pray. Boom, now you have two habits that are existing together. That's helping you create the habit of praying every day. Workout every day. Or excuse me, work day. Say you start your day by drinking your morning coffee or your tea or your smoothie. Right after that, write down three things that you want to prioritize for the day. Oftentimes, we don't do things and we don't create habits, or we don't do the things on our checkoff list because we don't even know what we want to do. It may be in our mind, or we may say we want to do a thing, but if we don't have it written down or put on a sticky note or something like that, we may not get to it. So, in creating the habit of actually writing down your routine, as soon as you drink your coffee or while you're drinking your coffee or your tea, sit down, take the time to write down the things that you need to do for the day. And then there's the other examples of exercise, evening wind down, and healthy eating. So stacking habits together is a way in which we can create healthy habits. And reminders. One thing for the next slide is to couple with creating new habits. It's good to have reminders. Setting a phone alert is one way in which you can set yourself to remind yourself to take your time to pray, to exercise, to drink water. I have an app that I have on my phone that goes off every hour and it says drink water because I have a bad habit of drinking enough water. And so when that goes off, I look at my phone, drink my water. It even gives me the ability to say how much water I've drunk that day so that I can make sure that I'm drinking enough water. And that works. As I mentioned, sticky notes. Some people are visual habit creators. And so you might, again, using that drink water example, you might have to put a post-it note or a sticky note on your desk or on your cubicle or on your mirror or whatever to remind you to drink that water every day. Having a daily planner also works. I had to go back to the habit of using a um, I'll get you in a second, of having to write down my to-do list and having an actual visual, a pen and paper planner. Like I used to do stuff in my notebook all the time, or excuse me, on my phone, but it just doesn't for me. It doesn't do the same thing as actually sitting down with a planner and like writing out my goals for the day, what I want to do for the week, recapping what I did for the week, and kind of maybe readjusting for the week ahead. And I see the question in the chat as far as the water. The water app that I use is actually called Water Minder. So WaterMinder. And I think it's available on Apple or Android phones. But basically, like I said, when I open up the app, it gives me well, I don't know if this will matter. I can't really show it, but basically, it just reminds me of what I need to drink every day and how many ounces of water I'm trying to drink every day, and I can set the schedule of how often I want the reminder to go off. If that Miss Causey, if that's the app that you're talking about for water, or we talk about general reminders for the like to do list stuff.
That's what I was talking about. Thank you.
Okay, okay, no problem. Thank you. Um, and then a habit tracker. So they have a lot of apps again, or if you like me, if you want to use a paper journal. Um, if you're trying to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to get done every day, just like with the water app, there's other apps that you can use to make sure that you're doing the things that you set out to do every day. Like the calendar apps generally have reminder alerts, or with iPhones, I know specifically, you can there's an actual app. There's a reminder app, and not only can you just write in what you're supposed to do on the to-do list, you can actually put in, hey, Wednesday, February 12th at 5 p.m. Read my homework, or excuse me, do my homework or read a book, and then that alert will pop up to remind me to do that thing, and it's actually an app that tracks my reminders. Or again, hey, I have my journal. This is what I need to be doing today. And every time there's time brackets 8 a.m., 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, and I kind of write in those things that I'm supposed to do every day, and then it helps me create those good habits. Any questions about those?
There's
Okay, and it only took
question
me 40
question.
minutes to get back where we were last time. But we were talking where we left off talking about last time. Oh, there we go. Water minder. That's it right there. Um, And so yeah, that's what I use as a free download. And it literally pops up every. I think I have mine set for every hour, and I can hit a button and I can put down if I drunk tea, if I drunk water, if it's 8 ounces, 16 ounces, whatever it is. It helps me move towards my goal. And so as you can see on the ad here, the more you drink, the higher up the colors go. And so when you get to a full day's worth of water, your face will, I think either turns completely blue or it does whatever, but it just shows you when you drunk all the water for the day. And there's apps for all kinds of stuff for habits you're trying to create. Okay, and so for the new habits for triggers, um, it kind of goes along with the habit stacking or the cue, routine, and reward. If you want to say you want to create the new habit of exercising, Environmental cues. You can place your gym clothes next to your bed as a trigger to exercise in the morning. Like, hey, if that's what you're trying to do, some people, don't mind having stuff on the bed, but some people don't like it. But if you don't mind putting stuff on your bed or having it on your nightstand or somewhere when you see it when you first wake up as an environmental cue, put those gym clothes right next to your bed as like, oh, a wake up call. Some people might sleep in their gym clothes, or at least maybe their tights or something. I don't know. Just people go to different extremes, but some people might sleep in their tights and tank tops so that, hey, as soon as they wake up, they can get right to the gym and do what they need to do. Um, and again, pairing with existing habit, which is the habit stacking, visual cues. If you say you want to read every day or read before you go to bed, putting in that bed right next to you, or right on your pillow or right on your bed or your nightstand is a great visual reminder. And then associating your habits with locations. So, say you have a designated space where you perform your habit to create a natural trigger when you enter that space. So, for instance, um, when I was first started working in the mental health field, I was working at a psychiatric hospital, and there's a term called passing the bridge. And so the idea is that I had to have a space that when I passed on my way home, it didn't have to be a literal bridge, but that's where I left all the baggage from the day. When I passed that place, I wasn't going to think about work. I wasn't going to, worry about what my clients had going on. I wasn't going to do anything. Once I'm driving and I get to that specific location every day, that's where I remind myself, hey, we're not thinking about work anymore, and we're getting ready to get home. Also, I also wanted to create the habit of coming out of my work clothes when I come home, because sometimes being in your work clothes can also be a trigger, a stressor, all those type of things. So when I came home, there was a space right next to the door where I can kind of take off my work clothes, which is really just a polo and maybe some khakis or something like that. But hey, leave that stuff right there, and then put on my the clothes that I was going to wear, so that anything that was reminding me of work would no longer be in my just in my conscious mind. And so creating a location, place, having a space where you cross that bridge, is kind of beneficial when you're trying to create new habits. Because again, if I wanted to not think about what I had going on at work, if I wanted to get in good space and be in good space when I came home, I had to have a place where I knew, like, hey, I wasn't going to think about the drama of the day, and I also physically needed to do something. And so I set up a space in my home where I can take off my work clothes so that I can get in the habit of like just clearing my mind and not thinking about work once I got home. Any questions there?
Yeah, one of the cues I use as far as like working out,
Mhm.
I just have my wife programmed to get up in the morning, and then she'll just say, Ron, you ready? And then that's when I get up and go work out.
Sometimes it takes a village, you know what I'm saying? So I think that is a very good cue, and I think I might have to start implementing that method as well. One thing that
Just
I did have
that's
to as
called putting
well.
the burden on somebody else.
It's teamwork, right? That's not teamwork. Oh man. Well, um, I think that sometimes we have to work together to accomplish goals. We're talking about creating new habits, and sometimes it takes a village to create a habit.
Yes, yes.
Um, for me, a habit that I was trying to do, which actually became a trigger in the negative sense of trigger, is I had guinea fowl, and guinea fowl like roosters, when the sun comes up, they like to make a lot of noise. And I was like, okay, this is a great alarm clock. But when the daylight savings hit, they didn't know that the time changed, and they didn't know that 6:30 a.m. Is still 6:30 a.m. But when the light's not out, and I'm still trying to sleep, and they in their mind they don't know it's 7:30 because the time has changed, or they don't know it's 5:30 because the time has changed. I should say they started to kind of make their noise earlier in the day. It was still 6:30 for them because they were on a different, they were on a was it a fall, was it spring forward, fall behind, so they were on daylight savings time, and they were just kind of just making noise a little bit earlier than I needed to, but it was a consistent time for them. It was still 6:30 for them, but it was 5:30 in my time zone because of daylight savings. And so I would wake up. They were great for doing that, but it was bad for my sleep. So I had to get rid of that trigger, and they were forcibly removed, and relocated to a different area. But it was a good idea. I thought it would be good for me to get these guinea fowl. as a way to help me wake up in the morning and be consistent with my schedule. But unfortunately for them, they didn't know about daylight savings time, and so it worked for a while. It was good times, but I had to come up with a new way in order to wake up in the morning, and I realized that the guinea fowl weren't it. So whatever it takes, sometimes whatever you got to do, you got to make sure that you um, put something in place. And it was a good idea. It just didn't work out long term. So remember, triggers and visual reminders are good ways um, to start off the 2025 right and create these new habits. And all right, the next slide, we're talking about overcoming challenges. And a lot of times when we're trying to create new habits, when we're trying to just move in ways that are different from what we're used to, or what we would normally do, these are the common obstacles that kind of get in our way when it comes to creating the new habits. And so, lack of time, forgetfulness, low motivation, inconsistency, feeling overwhelmed, or eternal distraction are things that we have to minimize and do something about, so that we can just kind of create those habits and be in a good space. And so, lack of time, you kind of related to feeling too busy to commit to a new habit. And so usually it's generally an excuse. I know a lot of us are really busy with things, but when we feel like we don't have time to do the new thing that we're trying to do, it's very easy for us not to do the thing. And often it's an excuse that we kind of build in subconsciously so that we don't start that new habit. And so if I'm telling myself, hey, I want to actually um, take a healthy lunch to work, or I actually want to pack leftovers, or I actually want to do maybe I want to do meal prep during the week, and instead of just going to get fast food or eating whatever easiest, the easiest thing it is for me to do is like, oh, I don't have time. Oh, if I had more time, I could cook meals instead of eating fast food, or I could meal prep instead of getting fast food at lunchtime at work. It's very easy for us to convince ourselves that we don't have time. Forgetfulness, forgetting for what you've committed to doing. So when you don't write your things down, when you don't have a list, when you don't have reminders, when you don't have an app on your phone, it's very easy to forget to what you committed to doing. Hey, I've committed to drinking this water. I know I need to drink water, but I don't have anything in place. It's easy to forget. And low motivation is basically losing interest or enthusiasm for the habit. And that's why we say, creating small habits, using smart goals, and doing things that'll help that motivation stay up, because once you have low motivation or lose motivation, or you're not enthusiastic about the thing, that's where that reward comes. And remember, giving yourself that chocolate to create the habit of running every day. When you have low motivation, it's very difficult to maintain that habit. And then inconsistency. The thing about creating habits again is like doing it. And this is where that 30 days of a habit creation and only a day or two of losing it comes into place, because after you're doing something for a while, when you miss for a few days and when you stop doing it for a few days, it's very easy for that habit to be broken, and then you kind of got to start all over with creating a habit. So you got to be consistent and feeling overwhelmed when you're trying to create too many habits or start too many new habits at one time. You're doomed to fail. And I think that's what happens a lot of times when people have these New Year's resolutions. They got a list of 10 things they're trying to do, and your mind, your body, like you're like, hey man, this is too much. And so again, an easy way that we set ourselves up for failure is creating all these habits and trying to do all these things at one time. And then over time, we're just going to be overwhelmed on top of all the stuff that we're already doing throughout our day. So you never want to jump too many new habits on yourself at once. And then external distractions, interruptions, or events that derail the progress. And it doesn't have to be something that's intentional or somebody's doing intentional. But when you say, for instance, when you're trying to create a habit of, say, I want to, I don't know, meditate for 30 minutes a day, or to pray 30 minutes a day, but I set the time of doing that when I right after I pick the kids up from school. So there's no way that I'm going to be able to pray, meditate, be in a quiet space, or do something like that for 30 minutes when my kids are first getting home from school, unless I just want to be the bad guy and make my kid, hey, sit down somewhere, be quiet, read a book, or unless I build in some kind of thing where the kids are also quiet during that same time. But having a really realistic expectations of not having external distractions when you're doing something at a time that doesn't make sense to do it, it's just going to leave room for distractions. And so we have to be mindful of minimizing those external distractions when we're trying to overcome challenges related to creating good habits. Any questions there?
No, sir.
All right, okay. Um, so overcoming challenges. So when we're thinking about strategies that help us stay on track, the next slide kind of talks about starting small, as I kind of mentioned before. When you when you have a habit that you're trying to create, when you have discipline that you're trying to implement in your life, when you have goals that you're trying to implement to create new habits, start small. I know we think we can do a lot. I know we think we can take on a lot of things. But as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. And so when we're talking about habit formation, especially something that we want to do throughout lifetime, um, or even for a season, if it's too big of a obstacle on the front end, more than likely it's going to lead to those excuses, forgetfulness, low motivation, all those different things. And scheduling it. I kind of talked about it before. You got to have a specific time set for each habit each day to make it part of your routine. Again, habits about routine to the point where it becomes automatic for you. And if you don't schedule it, you can say every day that, man, I'm gonna read a book for 30 minutes every day. I'm gonna practice French. I'm gonna practice Spanish. Whatever it is that you're trying to do. But if it's not scheduled, it ain't gonna happen. And it's easy to think that maybe because we have habits at work where things just become automatic and we do it. It's not the same thing when we're trying to create things for ourselves. Like when a boss is on your head or when you have a demand that needs to be met because it's gonna affect your money, it's kind of easy to get that taken care of, or easier. But when it's for our own benefit, when it's for our own progression, sometimes it's a little difficult to have that same motivation. So when it's scheduled and it's done every day at a certain time, it becomes a part of that habit. It becomes that part of routine. You give yourself a reward, if you need to. Give yourself a piece of chocolate after you read your book, or pray, or whatever exercise, whatever it is you're trying to do. But have that schedule built in. It's easier to do. Tracking your progress. So again, that could be with the app. That could be with a written down journal, whatever that looks like. You want to track your progress. And another thing is accountability partner. I think sometimes accountability is overlooked when it comes to creating habits, and following up with our goals. So having somebody that's checking in with you every week, or somebody that you're checking in with, more than likely you probably want to have somebody that's checking in with you. But just having that established, dedicated accountability partner to tell you, hey, it's time to exercise. Let's start our exercise, right? And it's easy. It's just having that partner there for you. It's a beautiful thing. And being flexible. So if you miss a day, you don't want to give up. You don't want to beat yourself up. You don't want to make yourself feel bad. But just flexible doesn't mean switch it up every week. But you just want to make sure that, hey, if you miss something, you don't give up. Keep going. Get yourself back on track the next day without the guilt. And of course, rewards, as they like to say where I'm from, treat yourself, don't cheat yourself. So the idea is sometimes you need to give yourself that treat in order for you to create those habits and those good and reaching those goals. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions?
No, sir. It's good.
Okay, sounds good. So let me plug in my computer real quick. My battery is dying on me, so I'll make sure my battery don't die. All right. Okay, and so one of the things for maintaining new habits is just kind of understanding the importance of persistence and patience. And so it's very easy, as I pointed out before, to lose the momentum, to become frustrated, to just give up. And so some strategies for long-term maintenance, in order to kind of keep yourself focused and keep yourself on track, is to kind of just have a space to where check in with yourself, or maybe you do with your accountability partner, to see to continue the goal, or to continue the habit. And you want to always be adaptable. If you feel like, hey, what I'm doing is either too much, or I don't have the time at this time of day, or whatever, you gotta, although you may set the goal of, hey, I want to exercise every day at 10:30. Once you realize You can't get it done at 10:30 every day. Create a new time, figure out a new time, and and go from there. And you want to review your habits and review the things that you're doing consistently to make sure that you're actually growing or you're doing the thing that's necessary. And you just kind of give yourself that space to see if this is something that's actually working. And then you want to, when you're building these habits, you got to remember it's a journey, not a race. And so if you find yourself not meeting the goals, or if your habits aren't picking up as you would like them to, you just got to keep going, and you got to be have grace for yourself, and know that it takes time for things. And so there's a few strategies that we use to kind of check in with our goals, check in with our habits, and kind of make sure that we're maintaining the habits that we're actually trying to do. One is called gradual scaling. And as a habit becomes ingrained and becomes a part of your daily routine, you might want to increase the intensity or the duration to prevent burnout and keep it challenging. So, for instance, say if the goal is to run a mile a day, and so say you get to that place where you're running a mile a day, and it's like, man, I don't really think I enjoy this anymore, or this isn't as challenging as it used to be. Maybe you might need to increase it to 2 miles. Maybe you increase it to 3 miles, because the goal with this gradual scaling is that you don't want your habit to get monotonous, and you don't want your habit to get boring. You want the habit that you're trying to create, and the thing that you're doing that's beneficial to you, to kind of still be something that's a challenge, or something that feels good, or something that you like. And so um, maybe feeling good isn't the case when it comes to running 2 or 3 miles, but the idea is that, hey, I ran my mile, I've been running my mile consistent. I want to continue to do this, and I see myself, kind of falling off and not running as much, or not being excited about the running. Maybe you need to boost it up a little bit. And then habit pairing, like we kind of talked about before, might have to link that habit to an already established behavior so that it remains a part of your routine. And so you say to yourself, hey, I started off brushing my teeth every morning, and then praying for 5 minutes. You know what? Like, my schedule's kind of changed, and when I'm brushing my teeth, I kind of got to get right out the door. I got to take a kid to school. Okay, well, maybe you need to pair that habit of praying with something else besides brushing your teeth, because again, life changes, things happen. And so if you feel like, hey, instead of quitting the habit altogether and not praying, maybe brushing your teeth, maybe praying right after you brush your teeth doesn't work anymore. So maybe you do it, after you drop the kids off, or while you're at work, or when you take your 15-minute break, or sometime during the day. But just remember, habit pairing doesn't have to be the same pair all the time. You just got to create that routine to where you're actually making sure that habit is stacked with something that you actually can do and will do. And celebrate milestones. Like, again, celebrate yourself. Like, sometimes you gotta, you know, uh, make a big deal, or tell a friend, or throw a party for yourself, or do something. If you reached or created a habit, and you recognize you're doing something beneficial for yourself. So if you want to celebrate that, and it helps to reinforce the behavior, and it helps to encourage you to keep doing it. Adjust to life changes. Again, if something happens in your lifestyle, your work hours change, something like that, you may have to make adjustments to your habits, and forming your habits or maintaining your habits based on the life changes that happens. Stay accountable. Again, regularly check in with a friend, your coach, your tracking app, whatever it is that you're using to maintain your accountability and your motivation. Make it enjoyable. Again, find the ways to make the habit enjoyable or rewarding, such as maybe listening to your music while you exercise. I've created a habit for the last week or two. I've been trying to run 3 miles a day on the trail in the back of the church. And the other day, I was just struggling, man. I probably got a mile and a half in, and I realized what I was listening to wasn't very motivating. And so I had to switch it up and put on some fast-paced music, some upbeat music, and it made the run a little bit more bearable. But I was listening to this dry app, and it was like this guy was just talking, reading the book. I was actually doing Audible, so I was reading a book while I was running, and that book wasn't hitting it. I had to boost it up. I had to encourage myself a little bit more. So I just put on some upbeat music, and that way it was a little more enjoyable. And then keeping it visible, again, having those reminders in the space around you, and having those visible cues, whether it's again a post-it note, app that you're using, or whatever the case may be. You want to have it visible so that you can see it and remind yourself all the time. to kind of maintain that habit that you have. I think this is a good time to stop here. We got a little bit more that we can continue, sir. If you feel like a third round of this would be good for us, um, but you know,
What do you think?
um, I mean, I really the last thing was really I can really just kind of talk about the last slide was basically just talking about habit formation in our faith walk. And that wouldn't take a whole hour. I can just run through it for a couple minutes just to kind of give us some uh I don't know, just a little bit of overview on the idea that these habits that were created always aren't just about exercise and it isn't always about eating better. There's sometimes there's things that we can kind of benefit from seeing other people's journeys. But it's this is maybe something that we can just put up on the website or something. But this this last two slides aren't necessarily something that we have to rush through.
Okay, so you want 5 or 10 more minutes?
Mm. Yeah, that'll be fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let me just talk about habit formation. And sometimes we don't realize and recognize that they call them spiritual disciplines, and that's reading your Bible, praying, doing different things are necessary for us to do, and creating time and space to have the discipline necessary and perseverance that comes from having good habits. And so when we're talking about habit formation and faith, there's scriptures and examples that we have in the Bible that encourage us to incorporate prayer and scripture reading into the habit formation process. And what I'm saying here is that sometimes, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, but our faith can allow us to create good habits and to understanding the purpose of having good habits. So I just had a couple examples here um, for seeing how biblical references or even figures in the Bible were able to kind of persevere and kind of um, use their faith to kind of um, fight fight the good fight and kind of do whatever it is they had to do in life. And so, just the first one I had is an example of Paul's perseverance in his faith. The scripture, 2 Timothy 4:7, you can see, and it kind of just says, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith." And so, the lesson in that, you see, Paul exemplifies perseverance in his ministry despite immense hardships. His discipline in maintaining his faith and purpose, even in the face of adversity, highlight the importance of staying committed to God's calling. And so the idea here is that, hey, when we're talking about creating habits, when we're talking about persevering, um, reading this particular scripture, 2 Timothy 4:7, and understanding that all the things that Paul kind of went through and all the things that he uh, just went through in his journey built up perseverance and it built up his faith and it allowed him to walk in his purpose and maintain a sense of perseverance and being committed to God and adhering to his calling. And so there may be habits that we need to do and things that we need to have for ourselves that allow us to persevere, that allow us to keep fighting the good fight, that allow us to keep the faith. And so scripture talks about that and gives an example there. The next one is Matthew 4 1 through 11, when it talks about Jesus in the wilderness. And through the scripture, is basically Jesus fasted for 40 days and nights, resisting the temptations of Satan. And the lesson in that is Jesus displayed discipline in fasting and spiritual focus, remaining unwavering despite physical hunger and spiritual temptations. His perseverance shows us how reliance on God's word can help overcome challenges. And so sometimes when we're creating habits, again, looking at scripture, man, Jesus was tempted and tested. The man was fasting, minding his business. Satan comes to him and try to distract him while he's, doing his fasting and praying. And the same thing when we're creating habits, things may come up against us, trials may come, tests may come. But as we look to scripture for guidance, it is sometimes we might have to dig a little deeper. And when we're creating these habits that just make seem like, oh, I'm just trying to do better, trying to exercise better, trying to eat healthier. Sometimes we have to understand trials and temptations and tribulations may come, but as we dig into the word and we, allow the spiritual formation that's taking place within us to kind of lead us and guide us, it can be something that can help us when we're trying to establish our habits. Again, as we were talking about doing the fasting, the Daniel fast and stuff like that, understanding even Jesus himself was tempted to break his fast. And so reading scriptures about fasting and other people's temptations and trials and tribulations can be good for us in creating good habits, especially when it comes to fasting and praying. I think the last one we'll kind of do for this is maybe the Israelites in the desert. That's Exodus 16. That's not Exodus 16 to 17. That's the whole book. I may have had a typo on that. But it might have been chapter 16 to 17. Um, Sorry about that. But basically, the idea with these scriptures is during their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites had to trust God for provision, showing discipline and obeying God's commands despite their doubts and frustrations. And we know the story. Not everybody made it in. Some people's doubts and frustrations got the best of them. They did a lot of murmuring. They did a lot of complaining. And as a result, they didn't get into the promised land. But for those that trusted God for their provisions and were disciplined in obeying God's commands, despite their doubts and maybe their frustrations, they entered into the promised land. And so the lesson in that is when we're thinking about habits and creating new habits and how our faith can play a role in that. Looking at the children of Israel, those that did make it into the promised land, even in difficult circumstances, the Israelites were called to maintain discipline and perseverance and trusting God for their needs, a lesson in remaining faithful through trials. So when we're thinking about habits and using a source of strength and a power outside of ourselves, relying on the Holy Spirit, praying, asking God to help us, reading scriptures, and creating that discipline thereof, and then studying scriptures that talk about discipline and perseverance and trusting in God. So many things are beyond me. And so when I'm thinking about creating habits, especially as related to even maybe there's a habit that I have, again, when I talked about when I make a mistake and I beat up on myself or start, talking down on myself, I have to understand that, man, I'm fallible. I am made in the image of God. God loves me. There's a lot of things I have to repeat to myself and understanding, like, hey, don't be so hard on myself. Like mistakes happen. I may spill some water. I may, forget to, read or do something that I said that I wanted to do. But I really have to lean in and trust God and really understand that, hey, um, by understanding that I can be helped and the Lord can help me and I can read scriptures to help me maintain focus and to feel better about myself and know that, hey, man, even though I make mistakes, I'm still loved by God. I'm still made in his image. He still cares for me. Although they seem like they may not have anything to do with each other, when I'm trying to not go into a negative space of just kind of dealing harshly with myself when I make a mistake, I have to read scripture. I have to pray. I have to remind myself that I'm still loved, that I'm still cared for, that even though I make mistakes, God is still there for me. And it helps me to keep going and keep continuing and creating a new habit of not talking bad about myself when I make mistakes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. And just kind of in just recapping, this idea of allowing your faith to help you um, create good habits. Again, reading scripture, praying, being accountable to others, having that in the background where you're trying to develop new habits is very beneficial. We can skip it. Like I said, I was going to maybe go to the group discussion and kind of break out in the rooms and kind of share our personal growth and experiences with each other. But we can kind of skip through that unless somebody just wanted to briefly share um, any thing that they have going on or that they've kind of experienced this year as they've tried to set new goals or new habits for themselves. Um, and if not, then we can keep going. But I think we had a lot of testimonies, especially at the church, about the Daniel fast and how that was good for many people and how it helped them create good habits. But did I hear somebody in there say
Yes, I think just as you indicated through the Daniel fast, we were able to create some positive habits. We also incorporated a short exercise routine to work on abs. And one of the things I did, which is what you mentioned, is make sure my workout clothes were in
something?
sight so that I didn't wear them to bed, but they were near the bed. So I had them ready. So when I had to get up at 5:30 to wake up Pastor Rawls, I would be diligent about that and not make him fail in his goal to do his exercise. So that was interesting that you put it there, but I do think that that was a motivator for me And then the scriptures that you just put, or the way you indicated how you could use the scriptures to really help you stay committed. The scriptures that we were given during the Daniel fast, when I started to focus on the scriptures, it helped me be more committed to the thing that I needed to be disciplined about. And so it was just helpful and motivating, just like you talked about the type of music that you're listening to. I do think that having a scripture to meditate on and think about why I was doing what I was doing was very helpful.
Yep, that's great. Yes. And so with if there's no other examples, I think that it's something about not to be belabor this idea of prayer and fasting, but I think that Daniel fast and what we're doing as a body was really beneficial. Again, for me, and realizing and recognizing that, man, when I really set my mind to do something, and when I'm doing something that's enjoyable, because again, we were eating fruits and vegetables and things of that nature, but I really found myself digging into new recipes. I was making like eggplant chips in my air fryer, which is, it sounds weird, but I was like, yeah, I wanted to try a new vegetable, something that I don't, normally eat, but let's make it fun and let's make it exciting. And so by trying different recipes and doing different things, now it's created a habit for me of like, man, I enjoy actually eating more vegetables and having a variety of vegetables I eat. And so, not being afraid to try new things. And I think again, that consistency of knowing that, hey, 10 days, 21 days, whatever the case may be, I'm going to do this thing. Let's do it in a way that's exciting, that's fun, that tastes good. Even though I'm eating things that I normally wouldn't eat, my taste buds actually, adjusted. And now I find myself, hey, I could do a smash burger, but I could also just eat this salad. I could go for this thing, but I could also eat this. And so it's kind of just almost, it feels like it's part of my DNA to kind of reach for that healthier option than to just reach for what tastes good or what's easy to do. And so with this last slide, we'll kind of just wrap it up. Celebrate small victories, as I mentioned before. As you're doing your habits, as you're creating your habits, as you're creating your routine, celebrate that thing. Either reward yourself with that piece of chocolate or whatever that may be, or just whatever it looks like, whatever celebrate looks like. You celebrate those small victories so that those habits become something that you continue to do. Of course, you learn from your setbacks. If you're not using SMART goals, or if you're trying to do things at a time where you can't do it, or if you're trying to put too much on your plate at once, or if you're realizing that, hey, the time of day that I'm trying to do something ain't working, if you realize this guinea fowls aren't a good alarm clock and I need to just get me a real alarm clock, whatever it is that you're doing, you need to remember that, learn from your setbacks, start small, scale up or build up, stay consistent, and then remember to adjust your approach as needed. Because hey, if you're trying to, continue to do things that aren't working, you're definitely not going to create a new habit, and you're not going to be consistent with whatever it is you're trying to do. All right. Any questions, any comments, concerns?
No, sir. It was extremely good information.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to encourage everybody in creating those habits. Just get the things done. Start 2025. All right. We're already a month, 2 months in, month and a half into the new year. Yeah, pick up those habits, create those habits, reward yourself.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. All right, and so you all should share this if you have a friend or so or someone that you think could benefit from this information. Just share it with them, and it could really, get you off to a wonderful start in this new year, creating good, healthy habits, so that the things that you desire in your life could actually begin to be manifested, because you disciplined yourself to get in the habit of making good choices. So we want to thank John Parker, the coordinator of our health ministry, and thank everybody else for tuning in. God bless you and have a great one. Remember, Bible study is in person tomorrow. God bless you and have a great one.